The purpose of Wealth Talk is to educate, inform, and hopefully entertain you on the subject of building your wealth. WealthBuilders recommends you should always take independent financial, tax, or legal advice before making any decisions around your finances.
Welcome to episode 49 of Wealth Talk. My name is Christian Rodwell, the Membership Director for WealthBuilders, and I'm joined by our founder, Mr. Kevin Whelan. Hello, Kevin.
Hello, Chris. Nice to talk to you again.
Yes, good to be back. And today's episode, we have named it The Rising Tide of Uncertainty in Business. So kind of topical here with a few things that have been going on, certainly things that have been in the news over the last couple of weeks or so.
Yeah, I mean, the rising tide is certainly true right now. I mean, we've had, look at those devastated businesses caused by the floods, the wettest February on record ever, I think, I've been told. Just imagine if you've got a small business and, you know, the floods just completely ravage your business and you're devastated by it. And for some, they'll never recover, you know, which is why I just want to say a real big thank you to entrepreneurs who, you know, get up in the morning, they take the risk, they make payroll, they have 5 jobs instead of 1 job to do, and they bust a gut, often, you know, paying a price for that. And some news later that is just devastating to me, what the government are trying to do to kick the owners, the business owners, squarely in the teeth. And I want to try and help people understand that problem and how to mitigate themselves so they can ride this tide that's coming. And not just that, of course, Chris, is the coronavirus is creating uncertainty everywhere. The markets don't know quite how to react, do they, at the minute?
No, we've seen the markets yo-yoing definitely over the last few days. And you know, you can read any kind of newspaper and see that it's having a knock-on effect across many industries. Of course, travel and tourism is being hit hard, but even the car industry. So we just don't know. And there's always this uncertainty, which I think is why we talk so, you know, with such belief about the more pillars you can have in place, then the more certain you are. And when these occurrences come up, then you really are protecting yourself because you're not reliant on just one source of income coming, whether that be a business or from the stock market.
Well, exactly right. And the reason why multiple pillars is important is so that you can create independence. And independence isn't just a word. It's independent from the economy, independent from political persuasions, independent from what happens in the weather, what happens to, you know, the sort of health situation. You've got to build your wealth in multiple pillars. And while we're still squarely talking about business owners here, obviously very close to my heart, as you know, many of you know my dad was a business owner and died, unfortunately, and fell into the business owner's trap. Maybe I'll talk about that a little bit. But there's just so many things business owners, you know, actually are exposed to more risk than anybody else. And I think it's important to try and get business owners themselves sometimes to see their life through a different lens, you know. So what I mean by that, Chris, is, you know, if you think about a business owner and you imagine them, you know, these people who are running their businesses up and down the riverbanks and everywhere across the country, they've got kind of a tunnel vision, don't they? They kind of look at the business as if the business is their sole focus, and everything they do is to you know, make that business work, particularly at the beginning, and then when they get into more complexity. And what they tend to do is build a quiet little web around themselves that sort of traps them in. And I think there's definitely a way to look at that in a way to see yourself, if you can, if you're in a small business or you're thinking about creating one, you know, begin with the end in mind and be an entrepreneur, not a business owner. And there's a fundamental difference between the two, Chris.
Okay. Would you care to share that with us?
Sure. Well, you know, business owners essentially kind of have that vision of doing business. So in reality, there's a bit of a misnomer going on that business owners somehow think, in many cases, that they'll use language like, my business is my pension, or my business is my baby. And they think about their business in a very personal way. And in many respects, they become so closely connected and tied to the business, it becomes almost impossible for them to see it as a separate asset in the same way as we'd look at a home or pension or an investment or a piece of property or a piece of IP. You get the point? They get sort of so focused on the business as an asset, but for many people, their business is not an asset because they've still got one source of income, which is them turning up, doing stuff in the business. And what I say is, a lot of people in business are what I would call smart business people. They have to be smart because actually, they're holding down 5 jobs at once. Think about me, Chris, I'm a teacher, so think of the language of smart. And let's have a go at that. Shall I do that? The smart form, and then have to be smarter. Okay. So if you're a business owner out there at the moment, are you still responsible for sales in your business? Are you the chief seller? Are you responsible for that? And if you are, you've got a sales job. Are you sometimes, when you look at the money side of things, which is the M, do you sometimes pay yourself last? Has there ever been a time when you had a sleepless night thinking about your payroll, but you didn't actually draw any income? Did that ever happen to you? What about, getting caught up in the day-to-day tyranny of the routine of doing work, fighting fires and feeling important, which is the A for activities? More often than not, the people in businesses are selling it, doing it, shipping it, managing it. They're almost in a place where they become indispensable and they feel good about that. And I would say if you're indispensable in your business, that's a bad thing. And then, what about your relationships? When people think about your business, do they think about you? Are you the key person that people turn to make decisions? Or do you empower other people to make decisions in your business? Like, are you the key relationship with the supplier or a key relationship with your top customers? Do people see you as the linchpin in your business? If so, that can be dangerous. That can make you fall into that trap. And just as importantly, are you sometimes, or have you ever been late or didn't show up for something for your kids? Has that ever happened? If that's ever happened to you, your relationships can be suffering as a result of that. And then finally, T for time. You sometimes find yourself knackered, weary instead of wealthy. Do you feel that? I know I felt that, which is why it's really important as I started off on my own wealth building journey to focus on not being smart, but smarter. And what I mean by that, Chris, is E stands for being an entrepreneur, not a business owner. Business owners focus on a business. Entrepreneurs focus on the enterprise. In other words, a business owner creates a business in which they work, trading time for money in various ways. And an entrepreneur creates an enterprise that works without them. Do you see the difference between the two? One is an enterprise. It works without you doing the work. Yes, you might set it up. Also, you're creating massive value. You're thinking about scale. You're not thinking about just limiting the amount of sales or the amount of things due to your time. So in other words, you're thinking about scale. You're also thinking about creating streams of recurring income in your business. That's a big theme for me, isn't it? And if you can create recurring income in a business that works without you, guess what, Chris? That business can be sold. If you create a business that can't work without you, it's dependent on you, then I'm sad to say, just like my dad did, you can get caught up in the trap of the things that can really kick your business out from underneath you. And at least 3 out of 4 of those things, Chris, happen to you as a person. Shall I tell you what they are?
Please do.
You don't want to interject in any way,
Well, I do want to just double check. We got the R there. So the R is for the recurring income. Yeah. Is that right?
So sales, money, activities, relationships, and time. That's smart, and that's the 5 jobs you've got. Pretty much trying to balance all of those things, and sometimes you might do it well, but either way, it tends to trap you, and it's an invisible trap. The complexity takes you over, right? I definitely can see that when I meet business owners. But an enterprise, think about the sort of people who naturally come to mind, Chris. So if I said to you, an entrepreneur, who comes to mind?
Well, Richard Branson always comes to mind. I'm going to say someone like Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg, these kind of big entrepreneurs.
Right. But even the people who created those enterprises, and you think about that, Virgin is an enterprise. Elon Musk has created enterprises. Zuckerberg created an enterprise. They started off small, doing things at university, doing things out of garages, doing things in a humble way. But they had a vision which was much bigger than the activities that surrounded the day, the week, the month in their business. Another one would be, surprisingly, probably someone like Oprah Winfrey, the first black female billionaire. And that's massive stuff, that people create multiple businesses because they allow somebody else to be in charge, to make decisions, to make the sales, to manage the money, to handle the relationships so they can have the time. Because having the time means you can be a leader of an enterprise as opposed to be the person who's in the business pulling or pushing the business. You see what I mean?
And one of the very best ways that we recommend very often on this podcast is to know thyself. And taking the Wealth Dynamics test is one of our favorite ways of helping our members and clients to really understand where their strengths and where their weaknesses are. And I think all of those examples of those entrepreneurs are people who have sussed out really quickly the things they're not good at and then surrounded themselves with people who are excellent in those areas.
Yeah, great point. Great point. And, actually talking about clients and so on, we've got to always have a couple of thank yous, don't we, Chris? So a couple of people who have said nice things about us over the course of the week. We always like to acknowledge that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So our latest review on iTunes for the Wealth Talk podcast is from Mogsy Morris, and saying, love the podcast and all the great content. The depth of knowledge and the way it's delivered is really engaging. I so wish this podcast had been available when I started my journey for financial independence 20 years ago. And thanks to both you and I for the content there. So thank you, Mogsy Morris. And we've actually had a review just come in on Trustpilot as well. So Trustpilot is another great place. If anyone listening now would like to share your thoughts and thanks for the content, then Victoria is our latest review, and talking about the help that she received setting up her SaaS. And she's found the whole process being very helpful, walking her through every step of the way. So thank you to Victoria and Mogsy Morris there.
Well, actually, it's Vicky, just because I know Vicky and know her well. And actually, what's interesting about her is, she had a opportunity to buy a property with Japanese knotwood in it. And of course, you can't get a mortgage on a property with Japanese knotwood. But her pension essentially made her that available because she bought the property essentially with the proceeds from her pension. So her pension, which would have been on the stock market, going all up and down like a yo-yo, as you said earlier on, Chris, now that turned into something that she can own, take care of the Japanese knotwood, and then she can refinance that and pay herself back. So, great story. And we've got many of those, haven't we, where people can leverage something they didn't realize. And this is being an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs are more creative. They see value and they create that value. And that's what we like. So even if it's creating value for yourself, the momentum of creating value for yourself enables you to, in due course, create value for others. And we heard that from Bronwyn's podcast last week when she talked about she created great value and then wrote a book, and now she's creating value for others. And this is the natural progression of wealth building. And actually, one of the progressions of creating value is also to create a business around that. And that's where we're talking about now. And one of the things that got my blood boiling this week, Chris, I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself here because I maybe haven't mentioned the kind of big things that get in the way of people's businesses. Maybe I'll do that, and I'll tell you what made my blood boil in a minute. So, there's 4 Ds, the 4 Ds that really can scupper a business owner. And the reason why it's important to know what they are is because invariably you never see them coming. It's a sucker punch. It's in your blind spot. You just do not see it coming. Left side, whack, knocks you out. And it happens thousands and thousands and thousands of times, which is why less than 5% of business, the same as the 95%, Chris, who don't make it to independent, less than 5% of businesses ever get sold. And part of that is because of the 4 Ds. Now, let's go through the 4 Ds. And while you can't protect yourself against them, you can protect a little bit against them. And you can certainly try and deal with the blind spots by building more assets, not just the business you're in. So, Chris, you know about my dad, right? So he died, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was a business owner, but did he have a contingency plan so that if he died, the business would continue? Did he have a management team in play? Did he have systems and processes that worked without him? Had he sorted all that out? No, he hadn't. Why didn't he do that? Well, my dad was smart, but he wasn't smart enough. And unfortunately, not only did the business die, he didn't actually have any life insurance either. More about that in a minute. And, when you get to a situation where, in business owners, they're often driven. And in many cases, like in my business, I'm a driver. My wife's not so much. My dad was a driver. Mum, not so much. And when you get to a situation, or as from Geordie to call it, me mam, and me mam was very badly affected because they had a mortgage, didn't get paid off. She had a lifestyle, didn't have a decent pension, right? So, these are the things that affect people. They die because something happens. They don't see it coming, or they never see it coming. They think they're invincible because they're full of energy, and you leave people behind devastated. Not great. Not great at all. The second one is just as bad, and I'm not being doom and gloom, I'm just being realistic about businesses, is disablement. You get something happen to you or a loved one. You get cancer, you have a heart attack, you have a stroke. Everybody knows somebody who's had cancer. Everybody knows somebody who's had a health problem. And whether it's your health problem or a problem of a partner, these things can be solved, just like death can be insured against, disablement can be insured against. But most business owners just don't get round to it, like they don't do their bloody wills, Chris. They just don't do this stuff because they get caught up in the trap. And business owners know this when you tell them, but they just go back to doing, the stuff they do every day, and they forget about doing these things, even though, if they look back, they would say, I wish I'd sorted that out. The other one is a bit more of a challenge. Don't know how you solve this one, but it's the divorce, right? So many people getting divorced. We know the divorce rate is high, and many business owners who suffer from that time challenge sometimes, have a higher divorce rate because of that time pressure. They're not balancing their work life very well. And all sorts of different challenges come from that. But if you know that potentially half of your assets can be lost in a divorce, just build more assets. Have the focus, because you can't control that. What you can do is have lots of assets, and ensure that you provide for a spouse, whether you're alive or dead, disabled or divorced. You take care of people, and that's really important. And the fourth one is disruption. We just talked about floods, we talked about coronavirus, but I don't know, disruption. Look, we've never lived in a faster time for technology change, for innovation. Just it's getting faster and faster and faster. The pace is picking up, isn't it? Just look at the high street, Chris. I know you're maybe younger than me, but if you look at what's happened in the high street in the last 10, 20 years, just the high street, forgetting about other companies, who's disappeared from that? You could probably reel a few names off, couldn't you?
Well, you certainly can't go to Blockbuster and pick up a movie anymore, can you? And Woolworths, I remember Thomas Cook recently, and Maplin. I used to love going to Maplin. So, yeah, a lot of those are no longer around.
Yeah, I remember when I started at university in Leeds, one of the big employers in there was Barrett Shoes. Well, they're gone. You said BHS, Mothercare, House of Fraser, and is it the people in the business who own the businesses? Are they not smart? Yes, they are smart, but they either don't see it coming because they're in a blind spot, or they ignore it. Just like Kodak did, when they thought, well, people are always going to need cameras, but they didn't need to develop them in the same way, and the whole world has gone topsy-turvy. If you look at the biggest providers of cabs in the world, don't own a bloody cab. That's Uber. Probably the biggest supplier of rooms, shared rooms, is Airbnb. They don't own anything. Just disruptors everywhere. You got a WeWork, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's another.
So,
What else? There's loads of them, aren't there? Look at who's changed the TV and all that kind of stuff, which is Netflix.
Netflix.
Yeah. So, so many things now happening, and each of these new businesses, have a high propensity for scale and recurring income, and none of the owners drive the cabs, clean the rooms, or making the films. They see themselves with a vision for an enterprise and a reasonable degree of recurring income that is enough for you to, add to the other assets that you've got in your life, or to think about how you would sell that business by creating it as a business that works without you and with a high level or a higher level of recurring income. Because what's the interesting thing about businesses, Chris, when they're sold is most business owners, get a bit of a shock. And when they sell, if they ever do, to an acquirer, they think that somehow an acquirer is going to take the business off them, value all the blood, sweat, and tears they put into it, and then give them a big check and work that way. If you don't have a business that's high recurring, low dependency on you, you're going to be in an earnout, which means you could be being paid in that business for 3 to 5 years, no longer the boss, an employee with targets and objectives that all the independence and all the freedoms you entered the business to have now suddenly have been withdrawn from you. Business owners don't see this because they get caught up in the doingness. They don't have a plan for exits. And I think just as, good property people will always have multiple exit strategies for their property, a good business owner has multiple exit strategies for their business. And one of the ways to do that, Chris, is to start today thinking about how you can actually create a package for yourself. So you start to do things as a business owner that aren't just about today, but are building that certainty for you in the future. And we need it because I've been hinting at my blood boiling, haven't I, Chris? You got a clue what it's about?
Well, I think I might because it was front page of one of the newspapers today, and business owners have had a certain advantage or a relief, haven't they, up until what might change very soon?
Yeah, so in the budget, which is coming this month, the new Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, I think that's how you pronounce it, has been dropping hints that they're going to abolish or potentially significantly change, we'll see, something called entrepreneurs' relief. Now, this is another reason why you have to understand why I'm saying don't be a business owner, be an entrepreneur. Because entrepreneurs' relief is basically a tax break that says up to £10 million. You can sell a business up to 10 million and you'll only pay 10% tax when you sell it. You don't get entrepreneurs relief if you keep it. You get entrepreneurs relief if you sell it. So you have to begin with a view that whether you keep it or sell it, a business must be capable of being sold. So that's the first thing. Entrepreneurs relief is for entrepreneurs, not for business owners. It's for entrepreneurs who sell things. And while that is under threat, the rumor is instead of making it 10 million, they'll bring it down to a bit like the pension allowance, a bit more like $1 million. Now, the reason why that makes my blood boil is if you change something in a heartbeat, when business owners, the savvy ones, will have been planning to maximize the profit in their business and often minimize their own takings, to up the profit on their business to get the best possible multiple on their business, and then they want to sell that business to give them the retirement income they didn't give to themselves because they thought the best way to control their retirement was not the stock market, but to be an entrepreneur and sell their business. And you pull that rug from underneath them, I think that's hugely damaging and sends a terrible signal for the very essence and the backbone of society. The people, as I said earlier on, who take all the risk, make all the payroll, are the innovators and the creators, and yet the government are making a soft, easy target to withdraw that relief from them. And that is why my blood is boiling right now, Chris.
Yes, I'm not surprised. And obviously, over the last couple of weeks, we've had two guests, Dave Pearce and Guy Bartlett, both talking about selling a business. And, I'm sure they will have some comments on this as well. And in fact, we did say that we would be inviting Guy Bartlett back very soon to talk about buying a business. So perhaps I can ask him his views when he's next on.
Yeah, but what it's telling me though, which almost vindicates, I'm an entrepreneur. I've got a number of different businesses, and each of them is capable of being sold. And while I may choose not to sell them because there's a high degree of recurring income in them, I still don't like the idea that there's somehow going to be a limitation on that when they're just pulling that away. Anyway, the key thing is, yes, it's an irritation. Yes, I'm on my soapbox for today. I'll be off it tomorrow probably, because I'm still focused on building wealth in multiple pillars. And the way to do that, if you're a business owner, is to learn the other pillars, get a sense of there are 7 pillars, including business. And almost if you can imagine that if you didn't have tunnel vision and you just thought about the business, imagine you took a helicopter view and you rose above and you could see, looking down, all the 7 pillars in a circle with home capacity and pension and investments and property portfolio, and there's your business, and then you can see IP, and then you can see joint ventures. And you imagine this big circle, and you're looking down from above. I hope you can imagine that. And that is your business. Your business is your wealth. Your business isn't the myopia of the business you're in. The business is the bigger business of your entire wealth, because in reality, you're always going to be in the wealth management business if you're surviving. Unless you die too soon, if you're going to live a long, happy life, you're in the wealth business. So see yourself in the wealth business, and I would encourage you to do 4 things. One of them is a little bit of a joke, just for me, and because I like to teach. So I want you to stop. If you're a business owner, I want you to draw a healthy income from your business to do 4 things. Okay, ready for this, Chris?
Mm-hmm.
First one, I want you to set up a director's pension. In other words, a SAS. If you've got a limited company, by creating a director's pension and taking some of the profit that maybe you've been restricting because you thought you're going to get entrepreneurs relief, shelter that profit, ring fence it and protect it. So whatever happens to your business, whatever disruption comes your way, you've got a good, solid family trust fund building up nicely, up towards that million. So then you can start thinking, right, target number 1, Mr. Whelan, let's get £1 million in all of our business owners' hands from their director's pension or SASs. And then if they've got £1 million tax-free from their business, we can go, right, million in the business, million in their pension. The next thing, if you're building your business and it's not ready yet, the R stands for relevant life. Relevant life, Chris. What that means is instead of ignoring your family or putting them at risk, if you believe you're building your wealth but you're not there yet, get the tax man to pay your life assurance premium. And when you add it all up, it's about 50% of the cost. When you get the tax man to pay through a relevant life program, you can get certainly up to £1 million worth of life cover. It doesn't matter what figure it is, but up to that kind of a figure. And the inland revenue pay the expense of that. And on average, when I've done the maths for people, Chris, it's about 50% of the cost if they pay the premium themselves. And as it's written in trust automatically, relevant life policy must be in trust, then you're actually protecting your family. So the pension is building your retirement income up, and the relevant life is protecting your family if you suffer the D on death. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Third is build assets as you go. So as you make some money, try and build an asset, whichever asset you choose. You can build assets in your business, you can build assets through your SAS, you can build assets personally. But take the time to build assets. Do something every 30 days to learn something or add a new skill. Imagine that you've got time in your current business, but time in your wealth business. And if you can, give that 1 day a month, 8 hours a month, 1 day a month, and you create independent wealth. And you know how to do that. If you're following the podcast, you know how to do all the 7 steps. And obviously, we're going to be talking a little bit, I guess, Chris, about the new program, because that's coming out on the 30th of March, right?
That's right. Yep.
You want to mention that before I finish on my final W?
Okay, well, I can interject, and I'd like to say thank you to everyone actually who's entered our competition, which we announced on episode 47. So we've had a lot of people entering, but there's still plenty of time, and that is to win a free place for the whole 12 months on our 7 Steps to Wealth program, which we will be opening up again on the 30th of March. So if you haven't entered, then head over to wealthbuilders.co.uk/competition, and you'll also be able to see all the details of the program there as well, and jump on the wait list as well as entering the competition. So yeah, that's coming up very soon.
Yeah, I'm excited about that, because we keep saying we're scratching the surface, aren't we, of the 5%, and we want to get that to 6% and 7%. And the way to do that is to try and at least help people have the skills to be able to build wealth on their own terms if they want to. If you're kind of slightly DIY, that's fine. Obviously, we believe wealth is better built in collaboration. We believe that very passionately, so we want to collaborate with people and help them. But whichever way you choose to build wealth, keep listening and tell somebody else about this podcast. So just as Mark Morris, Mogsy, mentioned us and said you wish you'd known 20 years ago, well, wouldn't he be very grateful if somebody nudged him and said, hey, Mark, have a listen to this. It's pretty good. But anyway, 20 years ago, we weren't doing it, Chris. You were still in your nappies, weren't you?
Just coming out, I reckon. Yeah.
You want to know what my final W is?
Go on then.
Well, I'm doing it myself, okay? So let's recap before I do. D, director's pension, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're not, we've got some free SaaS videos, right? So we teach SaaS. We've got some videos. How would they get hold of the videos, Chris, if people were curious about what's a SaaS, how does it work, who's it for, all that kind of thing? Because we've got lots and lots of materials around that. What's the best way?
Is definitely inside the free membership community. So heading to wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership, just register there, and you'll get access straight away to loads of resources and some SaaS videos inside of there as well.
Okay, I don't think we've got any videos on our relevant life, but if you're curious about that, you could find some way to drop us a message, and we can send you a bit of information about that. Absolutely critical if you're a business owner with a young family, and do not be like Kev's dad. Don't forget, don't be good intention but bad execution is what I say about my dad. He would be very upset if he could see what the impact of what he had done when he had really great intentions, and we all hoped the business would survive him, but obviously it did not. We talked about building assets. We know enough about that. But there's a few little freebies still left for us business owners. So I call this Wheels and Wellbeing, W. So well-being first, right? So well-being. You can claim an amount of money for a personal health check, like a well man or well woman check, up to 500 quid a year. And you can also claim for a financial health check as a director. So, if you're interested in that, give us a shout. You can claim that back. But big news. We talked about disruptors, Chris. And one of the big disruptors we're going to have in the coming years, you remember that was in the news recently, from 2035, you won't be able to buy in the UK petrol or diesel cars, because there's a whole kind of energy around electric cars and moving people towards that. So just an interesting thing. So I'll be ordering my electric car, which is a nice Jaguar I-Pace. And because it's an all-electric car, then there's no benefit in kind tax, which means my business can pay for it, and it costs me nothing. So I'm happy about that, Chris. Looking forward to taking delivery soon of my new I-Pace.
Well, I look forward to having a spin in that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure how far I'm going to get, Chris. So,
shall I bring my battery pack with me just in case?
Yeah, bring the battery pack just in case. Yeah, bring a little charger. But joking aside, my wife's not very happy about not being certain of that. But then, you're not certain how far you're going to get in a tank of fuel unless you fill it up. So, there'll be charges everywhere, and I'm more than happy to be part of the early adopters of electric cars if my company can pay that, and it's money I don't have to spend, and my business can pay for it. I work hard in my business, so why shouldn't I have a very enjoyable DRAW from my business? And I'm delighted to say I do that. And I would like everybody else to think about doing the same for themselves and stop paying yourself last.
Well, that's great. So we've covered a lot of different things today, Kevin. We just covered draw, we had smarter, and then the 4Ds. So I'll recap those in the show notes for anyone who perhaps wants to go back and jot those down. And I think a good message today is obviously business is still a great asset class, but you have to be prepared at all times for many things that can come out of the blue. And the overriding message, the more pillars, the more wealth you can build in multiple pillars, the better.
Couldn't have said it better, Chris.
Well, thanks, Kevin. I think you've got a speaking gig coming up, so I wish you well for that one this week. Should be a big event.
Yes, I'm very much looking forward to that. So this is the sort of message I'll be sharing with business owners, because I'm very passionate about helping entrepreneurs. They're very near and dear to my heart for all the reasons I've outlined, and I'm sure Entrepreneurs Relief will be talked about because the budget, actually the budget's next week, I think, isn't it? So it'll be talked about, that's for sure. It's the 11th, isn't it? And I think that's when we'll be seeing each other again, Chris, isn't it, on the 11th of March? So I'm sure we'll take a few minutes out to see what he says about that, and we'll report back, because it's quite an important issue if you're thinking about selling your business at some point. And I encourage all business owners to at least have a thought that says, if my business is a good business, it's capable of being sold. Frankly, whether you get Entrepreneurs Relief or not, shouldn't matter if you're building your wealth in multiple pillars.
That's great. Well, thanks for listening today. Thanks for sharing all of that with us today, Kevin. And we'll catch up on the next episode of Wealth Talk.
Okay, see ya.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget that we are constantly updating our resources inside the WealthBuilders membership site to help you create, build, and protect your wealth. Head over to wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership right now for free access. That's wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership.